Our story begins on Exegol, as Emperor Palpatine is awaiting the arrival of his apprentice, Darth Vader, an apprentice that Palpatine has now grown tired of. For the last year, Vader has spent his time searching for Obi-Wan Kenobi after his defeat at Kenobi's hands, again. Sidious still recalled a year ago when Vader promised that Kenobi would not get in his way of his missions and his progression as a Sith. But he lied. Sidious had spies monitoring Vader, and whether it was in his own castle, during missions, or even after missions, Vader spent countless hours obsessing over where Kenobi could be. No matter how many times Sidious tried to teach Vader that the real victory over the Jedi is forcing them into hiding, Vader just didn't seem to care. He needed Kenobi dead. Sidious no longer had time for this. He instead put extensive efforts into cloning projects on Exegol, deciding that he wanted full control over any apprentice until he was ready to be the lone Sith Emperor ruling the galaxy for eternity. And so, as Sidious checked in on these experiments, he could tell that his mostly important one for now was nearly complete. This meant that Vader was disposable. Finally, Sidious thought, he will be free of this failure as a Sith. And for the first time ever, Darth Vader would arrive on Exegol. Sidious gave him a wayfinder, as his final resting place would be the world of the Sith that he was too weak to ever even know about. Vader landed outside of the large Sith temple. Lightning was crackling all around him, reminding him of the night on Coruscant when he was put together as Vader. And Vader made sure to feel for his lightsaber as he entered the giant structure. Something was off. He wasn't sure why his master called him here, but he was intrigued. After roughly 11 years in this suit, he convinced himself that Anakin was completely dead, but the lingering thread that was Obi-Wan Kenobi was the one constant tie to the light, hence why Vader wanted him dead so badly. But for now, Vader forgot all about Obi-Wan as he entered the Dark Temple. Statues of ancient Sith surrounded him, and the lightning echoed like an eerie whine around everything. Vader walked around various vats of experiments until he entered the main room, where Darth Sidious was waiting over a large pit. Sidious pulled down his hood, and he began pacing above the thunderous pit, telling Vader that his entire life has led him to this very moment. A moment of reckoning for his constant failures to become the Sith he should have been destined to become. Vader reached for his lightsaber, realizing now this wasn't exactly a friendly visit. But before he could ignite it, lightning sprayed directly into Vader's chest, and he fell to his knees with a loud scream. The lightning paused, but Vader's breathing was now extremely difficult, and he could barely move. Sidious designed his suit to crumble under his lightning, and Sidious angrily yelled that his attachments were always his weakness. His mother, Qui-Gon, Padme, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan. Another blast of lightning hit Vader, and now Sidious lifted him high into the air, ripping his suit apart, as Vader could do nothing about it. Sidious yelled that Vader's new sacrifice will open up room for him to control the Sith for all of eternity. Sidious pulled his hands down, throwing Vader's burned, destroyed body into an eternal abyss of nothingness. Vader fell, and he fell through the darkness, the lightning and the thunder echoing all around him, and Vader closed his eyes, ready for this lonely death after everything he went through. But the sounds around him suddenly stopped, and when Vader began to open up his eyes, he was on some sort of blue, transparent bridge. His suit was still on, and it was completely repaired, and Vader looked around, hearing echoes of his past, seeing a never-ending series of pathways and bridges, as the voices of Qui-Gon, Padme, Clone Troopers, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Windu, and so many others began to ring in Vader's head, until all of them culminated, with Padme and Obi-Wan saying, "I loved you," at the same time. Vader then heard a new voice, his own, but not the robotic voice he'd grown used to, instead the human voice of Anakin Skywalker. And the voice said, "Are you ready to accept who you truly are?" Vader turned, and he saw him in the flesh. It was himself, Anakin Skywalker. But despite looking like Anakin when he turned, this version of him somehow looked older, wiser, as if he were a protector of some sort. Vader shook his head. This had to be some sort of vision. So he told Anakin that he is dead, and that only Vader remains. So Anakin smiled, and he ignited a blue lightsaber, telling Vader to prove it. If he is truly dead, then Vader should have no issue striking him down. And Vader realized he still has his red blade, so he ignited it, telling Anakin he was always weak. And Vader swung at Anakin. The two of them now, Skywalker and Vader, began to duel along the bridge. Vader was angry, striking with hatred and dark power, while Anakin was calm, collected, and he was using Vader's anger against him. The two of them dueled to the edge of this bridge, and Anakin ducked under a strike from Vader before kicking him to the ground. Anakin turned, pointing his saber at Vader and saying he still doesn't understand, does he? Vader said the only thing he knows to be true is that Anakin never had the power necessary to save the people around him. And Anakin shook his head, saying that was the wrong lesson, and he force-pushed Vader off of the ledge. And like on Exegol, Vader fell for a long time until he landed on Naboo, or at least what used to be Naboo. Vader was standing in the fields just outside of the city, and the city was burning while Star Destroyers rained from above. Anakin appeared behind Vader, and Vader asked him what was going on. Why is this happening? Anakin said he will show him, and they were both suddenly inside of the Naboo palace. Fires and explosions surrounded them. Stormtroopers were shooting down Naboo security members. Vader heard screams that he recognized, and he looked into the main room, where his wife, Padme Amidala, was laying on the floor, pointing a blaster up at Vader. And on the floor next to her were Ahsoka and his mother, both of them dead with expressions of fear still frozen on their faces. And Vader could only watch this horrible vision as he now stabbed Padme, killing her as well. The Vader in this vision looked up with yellow eyes, proclaiming his empire will reign forever. And Vader fell to his knees. How could this be? How could he ever kill his mother, his Padawan, and his wife? And suddenly he and Anakin were back in the world between worlds. Vader was still completely in shock, and Anakin now told him that would be the reality if Vader used the dark side to save everyone he loved. They would not only refuse to be with him, but they would actively fight him for what he would become, ultimately resulting in Anakin being the one to kill them all. And Vader began to understand. He always feared loss as it was something he couldn't control, but in trying to use the dark side to save his loved ones, he would ultimately lose himself as well, and in the end, he would have nothing. Vader turned to the dark side in order to never again be powerless as people around him die, but in the end, he still lost it all, and now he was faced with the reality that the darkness was never the way. So Vader looked up at Anakin, and he asked what he can do. Anakin said it's not too late for him. Although he has lost everyone since becoming Vader, he can still honor their memories by living in a way that would make them proud. So Vader would disavow the darkness in this moment, saying he does want to live as a Jedi. And Anakin smiled, saying Vader's redemption will give him new life. The world around Vader began to fade away, replaced by a bright light, and when Anakin eventually woke up, he was at the bottom of the Exegol pit, barely hanging on a ledge. Anakin then looked to his hands, his legs, his body, and he realized the suit was gone, replaced by his dark Jedi robes and his unburned body. Anakin felt like himself again. He was reborn, and with the darkness gone, he began climbing up this pit, step by step, until finally he reached the top. Anakin looked outside of the temple, where Sidious's Star Destroyer jumped to hyperspace, and Anakin noticed that the main cloning vault here was empty. Sidious clearly had a plan, and Anakin knew he was likely going to try and establish this new clone somewhere in the galaxy right away. So Anakin knew he must try to stop him. As he exited the Exegol pit though, hundreds of Sith loyalists that were stationed here to build Sidious experiments and his secret fleet of Star Destroyers began to surround Anakin, all of them pulling daggers from their cloaks. They all knew that nobody was supposed to see what was truly happening here, and they were ready to give their lives in order to keep Sidious's secret. So Anakin grabbed his lightsaber, and he shrugged, as if to say, let's get on with it, and the Loyalists charged at him. Across the galaxy, above Alderaan, Darth Sidious's Star Destroyer emerged from hyperspace above the planet and prepared his forces for a ground assault. Sidious decided that he had enough of Alderaan, as it was very clearly a hotbed of rebellion. It was hard to really do anything about it, as Alderaan was a core world, and attacking it could certainly spark a civil war, but Sidious already killed Vader today, and he decided to just keep imposing his will across the galaxy. If this causes a civil war, so be it. The city must burn, so the people of the galaxy know that he is not to be trifled with. And in the city, Bail Organa watched as TIE fighters circled around the royal houses. TIE bombers hit the Alderaan hangars hard, blowing up any means of escape or fighting back. And Bail decided to go to his emergency buttons, pulling up the communications for the rebel fleets and both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano. asking all of them, including the two Jedi, for their help, saying it appears the Emperor has given up any semblance of peace. Alderaan is under attack. And so both Ahsoka and Obi-Wan decided to help, knowing that if Alderaan falls, then the entire rebellion is in danger. And on Exegol, Anakin Skywalker was flipping around, cutting down dozens of Sith loyalists at a time. They were everywhere, swinging their daggers around at Anakin, but they were no match for him. Anakin leapt high into the air, slamming his fist into the ground, causing a ton of them to go flying to their deaths, and Anakin threw his blade into the air, guiding it to cut down many more of the loyalists, as he dodged dagger slashes time and time again, getting used to his real body once more. When it was over, Anakin ran out of the Sith temple, getting back to his ship, knowing he had to figure out where Sidious went. So he plugged in the coordinates for the nearest planets that would have access to the HoloNet, and Anakin took off into hyperspace. The coordinates would take Anakin to the planet Bracca, a planet that had many Imperial junkyards of old ships, and as Anakin landed, running to the nearest HoloNet station, he learned exactly what was going on. Alderaan was under attack. Anakin knew where he had to go next, but as he turned to get back in his ship, he noticed something in the ship junk pile, an old Jedi starfighter that was going to be destroyed soon. But Anakin had a better use for it. Above Alderaan, there were now 5 Star Destroyers above the planet, and all of them had TIE fighters flying out of them. The Rebellion, which was in its early stages, launched a small fleet of Mon Cala cruisers, and one of them picked up the Jedi, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka from their planets. Both of them observed the destructive occupation of Alderaan, and they received a hologram message from Bail Organa, requesting their presence on the surface. Someone, or something, is here causing chaos in the streets, and so Obi-Wan and Ahsoka flew down to the surface to try and take down whoever was causing this destruction. Together, they took down a few TIE fighters, getting on the ground before moving to intercept the main Imperial patrol, and as they rounded the corner, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka both saw someone they were sure was long dead. It was General Grievous, except there was something extremely off about him. It was a clone of him. But not only that, Grievous reached a hand out, and he used the Force to grab 2 Alderaan fighters, snapping their necks with the Force and laughing with malice. Grievous had the Force, and so both Obi-Wan and Ahsoka stepped out, igniting their blades, telling this Grievous clone to stand down, or they will destroy him. Grievous turned, his yellow eyes glaring at them, and he pulled out all 4 of his arms, excited to take down his first Jedi. The Battle of Alderaan raged across the skies and the plains, the Empire's war machines raining fire down on the peaceful planet, and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano faced a new, terrifying enemy. Grievous was back, or at least a new and improved version of him. The 4 lightsabers he wielded spun around with unbelievable speed, and the General ran at the Jedi. His new Force-enhanced movements evolved into a style-blending raw aggression, with fluid, unpredictable movements enhanced by the dark side. Ahsoka and Obi-Wan blocked the initial strikes, but they were quickly being pushed back. Ahsoka was kicked hard into the ground, and Obi-Wan's defensive stance held firm, his blue blade intercepting Grievous's strikes, with barely enough time to save Ahsoka from his killing blow. But this version of Grievous was far more agile than his original form. The Force made his leaps higher, his strikes faster, and his attacks much more relentless, and as Ahsoka scrambled to her feet, Grievous pushed her with the Force through a glass window. Shards of glass pierced her skin, but she called her blades back to her hands and readied herself once more. Each blow came with a surge of dark energy, pushing Obi-Wan back as the ground beneath his feet crackled with every step Grievous took. His limbs, once slow and deliberate, now twisted and turned unnaturally fast, giving him the ability to angle strikes from insane directions. Ahsoka darted back in from the side, her twin white blades flashing as she tried to capitalize on any openings. She moved with the Force guiding her, but Grievous anticipated her attacks with alarming efficiency, using the Force to nudge her off balance or push her backwards with waves of energy. He pushed both Ahsoka and Obi-Wan back once more, preparing for another advance on the 2 Jedi as they tried to gather themselves. And in space, Darth Sidious was getting updates from all around Alderaan. As he looked out at the battle in space, everything was going according to his plans. This planet would burn, and they would be forced to be loyal to the Empire in order to rebuild. Bail Organa would be taken prisoner, the 2 Jedi here would die, and Grievous would be the most feared enforcer in the galaxy, who would also be easily disposable. Things couldn't be going better. But then one of the officers on the bridge alerted Sidious that another Jedi fighter was emerging from hyperspace. Sidious narrowed his eyes, wondering which of the survivors would dare come here. As the ship emerged from hyperspace, Sidious felt a familiar feeling in the Force, but he just couldn't quite trace it. This was odd, but he watched as the ship spun around a group of 6 TIE fighters, and this Jedi took out all of them with ease, freeing up some Rebel fighters to continue in their battle. The Jedi fighter flew next to one of the Rebellion cruisers, and Sidious watched as a white and blue astromech flew out of the hangar, landing inside of the Jedi fighter as Sidious put the impossible puzzle together. Somehow, this was Anakin Skywalker. And in the Jedi fighter, Anakin laughed as R2-D2, a member of the Rebellion, flew into his ship. R2 beeped and chirped with excitement, as Anakin said he will explain everything later. But for now, they have a Star Destroyer to take down. Anakin told R2 that he knows the Emperor's Star Destroyer, as well as any ship in the galaxy, and he told R2 to get ready. Anakin blasted his ship into full force, heading right for the destroyer. Sidious could only watch as Anakin flew across his ship, destroying cannon after cannon, and Sidious knew there was no one better in the galaxy at flying. Anakin was executing every twist and turn with complete perfection, drawing TIE fighters away from the other rebels, allowing them to focus on the other destroyers. Sidious soon ordered his men to escort him to his shuttle, as his destroyer began to shake as Anakin continued to rip it apart. With Anakin distracting the destroyer's defenses, the Mon Cala cruisers were able to fire unrelenting firepower into the destroyer, ripping it apart, as Sidious was barely able to escape the exploding hangar in his shuttle. The destroyer explosion reached all the way to the 2 nearby Star Destroyers, and they too began to be destroyed, as the Rebellion now had the complete advantage. Sidious's shuttle entered Alderaan and was descending for the ground when it was suddenly hit with a barrage of firepower. Anakin was now behind Sidious, trying to destroy him, and so Sidious had his shuttle ramp lowered as he shot lightning out at Anakin's ship. Anakin dodged the first blast, but the second one hit the Jedi fighter as it got right behind Sidious's shuttle. The ship sputtered, and Anakin told R2 to get control of it and come save him when he needs him. R2 beeped to say it'll be done, and Anakin ejected himself, igniting his lightsaber in the air as he landed on the ramp of Sidious's shuttle. Anakin swung at Sidious as the Dark Lord barely dodged it, then ignited his own red blade, but it was too late. Anakin was able to cut through his wrist, then he spun to stab Sidious through the chest. Sidious gasped, and Anakin said he should have done this years ago. Then he pulled the pilot out of the shuttle before throwing Sidious into it and jamming the controls. Anakin flipped backwards out of the shuttle, and R2 was waiting for him as they flew away from the exploding shuttle once and for all. On the ground, Grievous had defeated both Kenobi and Ahsoka. He was holding both of them up with the Force, choking the life out of them, when suddenly, the Emperor's shuttle landed directly behind Grievous. The explosion caused Grievous to fall to the ground, and he dropped both Jedi, and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan didn't waste a moment. They both grabbed their lightsabers, swinging at Grievous to kill the cyborg clone before he could recover. And they both looked up to see a Jedi fighter taking down TIE fighter after TIE fighter in the air. And so, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan finished the job on the ground. When the battle was over, all 5 of the Imperial Star Destroyers were now just part of a large ship graveyard above the planet. Alderaan won this battle, and the Galactic Civil War was basically over before it could begin. On the ground, as the Rebel forces were uniting in excitement over their victory, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka watched as the Jedi Starfighter with R2-D2 landed, and from the ship emerged Anakin Skywalker. Anakin smiled, running at his 2 old Jedi friends, and both of them were in complete disbelief. Ahsoka, through tears, eventually ran to give Anakin a huge hug as Obi-Wan approached him in shock, confusion, and a bit of fear. Anakin nodded to Obi-Wan, saying he will explain it all. And so Anakin soon explained everything, how he essentially died as Vader, but was reborn once more as Anakin Skywalker. He was brought back to fulfill his destiny, as Palpatine poisoned the Force for far too long, and eventually, the Force was able to respond, and Anakin eventually would succeed. With the Emperor gone, and reports of what the Empire was doing to Alderaan, the rebellion would grow exponentially in numbers within just a few weeks. Across the galaxy, Imperial occupation was rejected, as the people would fight back, and Jedi that were hidden or exiled would return to the fight as well. Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka would continue to fight the Empire, and the Empire would begin to tear itself down as well, as many different people were vying for power at the top. Within months, the Empire was ripped apart. When New Republic Chancellor Bail Organa stepped in, the Jedi were restarting the Order by re-establishing the ancient temple on Jedha. It would be the new home of the Jedi Order, as Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Yoda, and many others would travel to begin once more. And this is where Anakin would learn that Luke and Leia survived, and ultimately, Luke would become a Jedi in this new order, while Leia chose to stay out of the order and instead pursue a career in politics with her father. The galaxy was secured, and as Anakin lay awake at night, he felt peace for the first time in over a decade. He knew that someday, all of Ahsoka, Luke, Obi-Wan, Leia, and everyone else would be gone. But Anakin was not focused on saving them. Instead, he knew he must learn to live through them and honor them while they are still around in this new, rebuilt galaxy. And folks, that is our story for today. It's an Anakin redemption story where he doesn't die at the end. That's the path we took today. It's because he was, I don't know, kind of reborn from the Force. Usually if I just have Anakin be saved from being Vader, then I kill him off because it's hard to have the galaxy be like, hey, the child killer's good now. But we decided to take that one, or just go down that path today. You know, different path. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed it. I always like exploring the ultra mystic side or ultra Force side of things, you know, just really dive into the Force, the world between worlds, you know. So yeah, ultimately, like, none of this is really canon. Obviously, it's a story I made up, but yeah, I wanted to explore a path where Sidious just gives up on Vader and is ready to just take over the galaxy by himself. But the Force itself is like, heck no, can't do that. So, retaliate. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought. Appreciate you for listening. And yeah, let me know what you want to see next, as I'll see you in the next video.